Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. I want to spend a quick moment today sort of collecting a whole bunch of images of the new hardware for cameras on the outside of vehicles, Model S and Model X. At this point, it doesn't appear that Model 3 or Model Y have these additional cameras, which is logical because that was what we were told, was that S and X would get it first. So I expect that we will see an official announcement about this in just a few days on March 1st when they'll talk about hardware 4, but obviously versions of this car are out in the wild at this point, and especially the Kilowatts and also Sawyer Merritt and a bunch of other people have been very, very helpful in putting these out, but they're sort of randomly scattered around a whole bunch of tweet threads. And so what I wanted to do was sort of collect all of them into one video. So big shout out to everybody. I will try to put a few of these links at least in the description so that you can kind of go down this rabbit hole yourself if you're interested. But before we start, I want to touch on the Cybertruck real quick, a little bit more high resolution images of the Cybertruck, and also the version 11.3, which Tesla Bull here was kind enough to give us a nice high resolution version of this. Of course, I'll put a link to this in the description. Anyway, if I blow this up a little bit, it's obviously there's issues with the with screen reflections and things like that and all sorts of stuff. So it's not perfect, but hey, it's fantastic. I love it. And you can see a lot of the details of what's going on. So anyway, I'm going to play this at double speed here just so that you can see it and go through it while I talk about it. But the biggest, most obvious thing you can see now is that the blue line, that the noodle that was in front of the vehicle is now a big noodle instead. It's a thick noodle. It's a linguine noodle instead of a spaghetti noodle that's there. And there's also, it looks like the color is much more of a dark blue. The interface, just generally speaking, looks very, very elegant now. It's a little bit smoother and more attractive looking than the current version. Maybe that's just because it's the new stuff. But you can see this is on the highway and you've got the yellow lines and the white lines. So we're definitely getting the new beta software version running on the highway. Very, very different than the visualization that's currently there. And then of course we're exiting the highway. And this is really interesting because here we get to a non-functional red light. They're doing construction at this specific spot. And so when you watch the person coming up here, you can see that there's like a four-way stop where there's supposed to be a traffic light. And this would be something that could really, really throw a full self-driving computer. It wouldn't know how to handle this. But if you watch this, even with cross traffic and everything like that coming through, the car handles this very, very well. And it gets through and just goes right on, through the intersection. So that is pretty amazing stuff because that is very, very complicated. So anyway, like I said, I'll leave a link to the actual YouTube video in the description, but I thought at least it was, worth looking at the fact that we can definitely see that this is running a new stack on the freeway right now, as opposed to the old 4+ year-old version of the software, which is just amazing. So can't wait to get my hands on this myself. But this is all very exciting to see it out in the wild and have actual real drivers doing this. And it's also fantastic to see it handling, pretty complicated road situations. A down traffic light that is non-functional with a replacement of four-way stop is that's not the easiest, most trivial thing for the car to handle. And it handled it really, really well. Next up, we can see this video from CybertruckOwnersClub.com that the Cybertruck guy reposted or whatever. But this is a much, much better. The other day, I posted something that looked like, I think somebody said it looked like a potato. I think that was actually Dylan Loomis from Electrified, which was really funny. But anyway, this is a much, much higher quality render that allows you to see how high the truck can get off the ground with the air suspension jacked up to what I assume is the maximum, maybe not, but it looks like it's pretty high up there. So that's it's a nice high clearance if you're going to be doing some off-roading work, or again, if you need to load the back of the truck with something heavy, you can pump up the amount of pressure on the rear axle and you can allow the truck to maintain more of a level than being, kind of like this, which often happens with older trucks. When you put a lot of weight on the back of it, it tends to get mashed down. So anyway, you can see a lot more details there, and you're welcome to pause this and look at it. The truck is looking very, very attractive. And we also just saw it in California at Tesla's new HQ, where Elon Musk met the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, and they had a very, very brief sort of ceremony celebrating the fact that Tesla is going to maintain their presence and actually expand it in the area that they have been. When I went to AI Day number 2, 2022, they're in part of the HP like, I don't know, campus. And it sounds like they maybe, I'm not sure if they're expanding to the entire campus or taking over more of it, but in any case, they're expanding out their presence there, which is really, really good news. It's great to hear that they need that space and that they will have room for more AI hires, more software people. So that's fantastic as well. All right, and now on to the cameras. Let us begin with this February 20th post from Teslascope. And I had mentioned this before, but we have a zoom in on the Model X here, and it appears that there is a camera there, but I'm going to show you something in just a second that indicates that perhaps that is not the case, and this is just a trick, because you can see how blown up this little thing is, right? This is very pixelated. And if we look at it in the original size photograph, you know, there would be the spot where my mouse is right now. And, you know, I'm not positive that we're looking at something that actually is a camera. It might just be a trick of the light and not actually a camera. So here, if we move over to the kilowatts, he's got some pictures here. And if we blow these up, you can see this would be the area where there would be that camera. And I mean, maybe like right up there, maybe there's a camera, but he said that he didn't notice it as he was moving around the vehicle. This one's got a lot of sun on it, so it's very, very difficult to tell. So anyway, it doesn't look, and here we have a video of that as well, but you know, he said that he doesn't see a camera, and if it's there, it's very, very well hidden. So we don't know at this point. Again, remember that there are supposedly 11 cameras that are going to be there, and that 3 of those were supposed to be on the front, like either headlights or fender or something like that. And the evidence at this point indicates that there's a possibility that that might not actually be the case, at least for these. So maybe it might be something that's only on the Cybertruck at this point. If we go back to the Cybertruck video, however, and look at that, you know, there may be in this bar down here where you can't see particularly well, that's kind of like between the main stainless steel front part and the bumper itself. Maybe you can hide some stuff in there. I don't know, but it could be that this is the vehicle that might have 11 cameras, or they're just in places where we don't know at this point. So it's a little unclear about that whole thing. This, on the other hand, is the repeater camera that's on the front, sort of, it's more or less over where the wheels are in the front of the vehicle. And you can see that the old repeater camera here was very backward facing. It was kind of like aimed. So when you turn your turn signal on, you could always see that it was oriented backwards and kind of showing you your blind spot. This camera, on the other hand, obviously is more forward facing, and it looks like there's some sort of like light here. I assume just a turn signal light. It looks like it's a repetition of what this is. But the most interesting thing about this, and well, there's 2 interesting things. Number one, this is substantially larger, assuming that the size of the housing is more or less the same. So you can see that the lens itself is much, much bigger than this old version. That works along with the idea that these are the new Samsung cameras, which are, I think, 5.4 megapixels or maybe 5.6, somewhere around that amount of megapixels. So substantially bigger lenses, bigger chips, which of course allows it to take in a lot more information for processing. And if you haven't seen my video about hardware for and what it's going to do to the full self-driving beta software team, you can definitely check that out up here if you're interested. But anyway, in the meantime, we can also see pretty much all of these new cameras have kind of a red like reflection over part of it. And Dylan from Electrified took a guess that maybe this is an anti-reflective coating or something. It could also be HAL from 2001. We don't know. It's getting a little bit HAL-like. It's a little bit scary having that red stuff. It could also potentially just be some sort of infrared coating or something. I don't know. But there is a consistent kind of red ish hue to parts of these cameras. And given the fact that it's not like over the whole thing and looks like it has to do with the light angle and things like that, the odds are that it could be some sort of perhaps infrared reflective coating or something along those lines. But anyway, it would make sense that it would have some sort of anti-reflective coating, because these cameras have a tendency when the sun is like on the side and shining into them to get occluded, and you get errors in the car and it says like, oh, can't see right now. So putting in some sort of anti-reflective coating would be a good idea, and obviously Tesla might be doing that. And then of course, continuing on with this sort of thread, we've got the Kilowatts posting this, and FSD and Chill replied to this. And here, this gives you a little bit better of an idea of where this is. So like I said, near where the front wheels are. But you can see that this, the little sort of strip, these lights and everything look a little bit different between the 2 vehicles. So it should provide a distinctly different look, like subtle, but definitely different between the 2 of them. them. But you can also see that again, that the camera's like looking straight at us. It really does look like Hal there with that red dot in the middle of it. It's a little bit scary. When it says I can't do that, Dave, then I'm going to get terrified. That's going to be what's going to happen. But you can definitely see how this older version is looking much more backwards towards the blind spot. The newer version is staring much more straight out at us. So there's a very distinct difference. Now, obviously the angle's a little bit different too. I expect that this will be a wide enough angle camera that you'll still get the blind spot, because that is important to be able to see that. But it also does appear that it is facing more outwards, so that it will be helpful in a situation where the car comes up to an intersection where it's sort of occluded. It won't have to drive as far out to be able to see the cross traffic that it needs to get around. Chuck Cook's left turn would famously be one of those. So this should help it to not have to go as far forward. It also, you know, makes it not as necessary perhaps that they have these front fender cameras. So again, those other 3 cameras, we don't know exactly where they're going to be. And again, as we saw, there's not as much evidence that potentially there are cameras there. So anyway, just the fact of pointing this more sideways to allow it to see more sideways may make it unnecessary to have these front fender cameras. But again, they are there in the hardware thing that Greenlee only described. You can see that there is 12, one's labeled a spare, but we get 3 that are supposedly fender versions of the cameras. So maybe that's just for future reference. They'll put it into future models or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, at this point, it looks like this might be adequate to deal with cross traffic. Then, of course, we get this really, really nice close up. I believe this is a Model X here, but you can see that there's no ultrasonic sensor pucks, which is really, really nice. And again, you can't really see anything in the headlight area that it looks like a camera, but you can see the fog lights, and you can see that the front fender is smooth. It doesn't have those pucks. It does have that big one is a toe puck. So that would be like if your car was dead and you had to have somebody hook up something to it and tow you. That's the toe puck. But this other stuff is very, very smooth, and you don't see the evidence of those little teeny pucks that are all around current models of Teslas, but and also tons of other cars that have ultrasonic sensors. And then back to the repeaters one more time, you can see a little bit more, evidence of this. This would be on a white vehicle, so it's a little more obvious how it fits in with the decor and everything. So here again, you can see it is aiming backward to some extent, but not as much as before. It's more straight out looking and a more close-up version of it. And again, you can see the little light strip is different than it was before. So definitely from this angle, directly side on, you can see it is still aimed backwards, but it's not as backwards as it used to be. And then the next tweet from the Kilowatts, it looks like every Model S and X without visible ultrasonic sensors, in other words, that would be hardware 4 most likely, in the delivery lot has camera units that I have never seen before. So again, looking at close-ups here, so obviously this is the new version of the repeater camera on the side that we've looked at previously. And for those of you who thought that the side pillar cameras were going to be moving, this gives some evidence that the side pillar camera is going to remain where it is. This is in the door, in the pillar between the front and back doors on the vehicle, which is where the current Tesla pillar cameras are. At least, again, this is a close-up, so it's a little hard to tell, but it certainly looks like it's in the same spot, at least within a couple of centimeters of where the other one used to be. And also, look, they've interestingly replaced the Tesla T with the actual word Tesla across the back, which is really interesting and very cool. But you can also see this is the one that's above the license plate. Obviously, that would be where the license plate would go. And this camera as well, it's not as tucked in as the other ones is. It sticks out a little bit more, but you can definitely see the red. And in fact, if we blow this up a little bit, it's a little hard to make it out, but weirdly enough, it actually almost looks like it's like, I don't know, like 4 or 5 little like LEDs or something like that in there, which could be really weird. I mean, maybe this is more of an active camera. I think that would be, I'm a little hesitant to say that, but it sort of looks like it actually has some sort of active lighting in there, some sort of active infrared that's going on. I don't know, that it's just occurring to me looking at this because it's so crazy. It looks very distinctly like there's something active going on in there instead of passive. But I think that could again be a trick of the light. But no matter what, you can see this is a much, much bigger camera than the old ones. If you've seen the old Teslas, the backup camera is very, very small. This one is substantially larger. And just because, why not zoom and enhance? Because it might be like the 80s. Unfortunately, can't enhance as much as I can zoom, but this is a close-up of that particular image. And again, it's very odd. It looks like, again, it could just be lights coming off of random things, but it is daytime and it looks a little odd that it's so distinct, and it actually looks like it's glowing a little bit. So it's definitely not something that's over the entire lens cover at the very least. If it is anti-reflective coating, it's right on the actual lens, like units themselves, the actual glass inside of the lens itself. And that very well could be the case. And it could again be like just sort of a red anti-reflective. Red is an interesting color. Usually anti-reflective, like if you see it on a watch or something, is more in the blue realm or something. So again, it's very curious that that is the color that is being reflected, if it's reflected, and if it's actually active and there's something that's going on in there that's actually lighting it up from the inside. Again, it just looks an awful lot like HAL, but I don't know. I say with some sort of like tongue in cheek that it could be active infrared. Sandy Monroe is all about FLIR or forward looking infrared. And so, you wonder if that could be the kind of thing. I don't think that these cameras are active cameras. I think they're only passive. They only take in light. So anyway, we'll have to kind of wait and see what this red is, but it is very intriguing that it is that intensely red, and you can see it so easily in all of these pictures. And a quick addendum here, I realized that I had a ringer in the family. My son is actually a director of photography and dimmer board operator in the film industry in New York and knows all about cameras. So I sent him this picture. I said it's off of Tesla with new hardware, probably a Samsung camera. And he wrote back immediately, said, oh yeah, that's an infrared filter. That's just a filter that takes out the infrared light in a camera. And if you know anything about cameras, the digital type of cameras, they have a very, very strong reaction to infrared light. In fact, it was actually kind of a thing back in like the 90s when the original camcorders came out with CCD sensors and CMOS sensors and stuff, that before they had the infrared filters that they put on the inside of the glass, that they actually used to shoot through clothing and stuff like that. So yeah, they're kind of X-ray type vision things. But anyway, so they put these infrared filters on because these cameras tend to have a very strong reaction in the infrared, which is lower wavelengths than we human beings can see, but it's kind of heat, more or less. It's the way we would feel it, but it's near infrared. It's not really heat. Heat is more far infrared. But anyway, the redness of the filter is because it's very far at the low end of what we can see, which is red, and then below that is infrared. So he said that this is a filter that's basically just cutting out the infrared stuff so that we don't, so that the cameras are not picking that stuff up, because primarily, of course, these are, of course, cameras that Tesla is using in their cars, but they're also cameras that Samsung just sells overall. And most uses, people don't want the infrared. Interestingly enough, I think Tesla actually might be interested in that, because picking up a little bit of near infrared might actually be useful for determining some of the heat signatures and things like that off of objects. But anyway, be it as it may, my son says this is definitely kickback of the light, the ambient light outside, bouncing off of the infrared filter. So with that expert opinion, I would say that mystery is pretty well solved. And here we have just a little bit of a wider angle view so you can see the full Tesla across the back. Looks pretty slick. Ooh, this one's a plaid too. That's cool. So they've replaced the actual word plaid with the plaid, logo kind of thing again. So anyway, very cool. That's really slick to be able to see the update to the Tesla and actually the plaid logo on the back. And then Sawyer Merritt pitches in. This looks like the actual, that rear liftgate thing again. Anyway, you can see him describing the difference between these two cameras. You can see how much larger this new camera is, the one that's on the left to the one that's on the right. The one that's on the right does have a little bit of a red glow, so maybe it does have a little bit of anti-reflective too. But again, that looks like it's more on the surface of the lens rather than internal. So again, I'm utterly fascinated by what this little red stuff is that's going on inside the camera lens. And then finally, let's take a look at the front forward facing camera unit. This is the thing that faces outward from inside the windshield that's right above your rear view mirror. And this distinctly looks different than what we have seen before. So a couple things to notice. Number one is I believe that this one up here is just the ambient light sensor. In other words, it just tells you whether it's day or night or something like that. It might be something more than that, but it doesn't look like the actual heating elements are around that. The heating element is much more distinct than it used to be. I believe that that's what this orange sort of double triangle looking thing is. That would be to heat this unit up as efficiently as possible so that, if you have like ice or snow or something like that, it melts off as quickly as possible. You can see that the center camera that's looking here, again, it looks like it's probably the same camera variety as the other ones. You can't see the red in this case, but it looks like it's the same size as the other ones, and it would make sense that they would all be the same camera. Interestingly enough, though, you've got this obvious sunshade sort of thing, right? So instead of the camera just being out there and being exposed, if the sun is coming in at an angle, you've got something which will actually give it some shade. It's unclear whether there's one at the top of it, but it definitely has them on the side. So that will reduce at least some of the glare on the lens, which can easily hit these lenses because the current version is very exposed. And so if the sun is at any kind of front-facing angle, it can cause all sorts of problems with lens flares and, you know, glare all over the place, things like that. So that should help. The other two potential cameras here, so the idea that I understood was that we were going down to 2 cameras in the front unit rather than 3. The current version has 3, and it looks to me, it's very, very hard to tell from this picture, but it sure looks to me like we have 2 more camera units that have the same sort of sunshade around them here. So maybe we still do have 3 units here, and maybe Green the Only looking at the reference stuff from the new hardware 4, maybe that's not what they're actually doing at this point and they changed it, or who knows. It could also be that one of these is just empty, and again, it's just kind of a trick of the light. You can't actually see the lenses, especially on this one on the right. The one on the left looks more distinctly like it could be a camera there. The one on the right, I'm not positive whether it is or not. But anyway, this is very, very different from the current version that's out there as well. You can see that the heating unit is more pronounced. It should work more efficiently. The sunshade, you know, around the outside of the camera lenses should keep it from being blinded as often. So all of this stuff should very, very much help the car to work better. So overall, I'm really excited to see that we have version 11.3 that is out and in the wild finally, and hopefully it will go wider very, very quickly. Hopefully it's very successful at this point. We saw more evidence of the Cybertruck. In fact, it did some off-roading at Tesla's new HQ2 in Palo Alto, California. It did a little thing where it drove up over the landscaping and everything, which was kind of hysterical. I don't know exactly why they did it. The video itself is a little unclear. I was wondering if it was Elon Musk driving it himself, but I couldn't quite tell whether it was him. I don't think it was. But anyway, that's really cool to see it with the suspension and see it out in the wild as well. And then all of these cameras that we've seen and the new locations and the obviously much bigger cameras and the very intriguing red thing. And in the meantime, we have less than a week before Tesla's Investor Day on March 1st. So I'm sure we will find out an awful lot about this stuff very, very soon. And I'm super excited about finding out even more about this. In the meantime, speculating is a lot of fun. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it fun and interesting and thought-provoking. If you did, please do like the video so other people can find it. And of course, consider subscribing for more of this kind of content. We're actually super close to 50,000 subscribers, and so I very much appreciate it. Thank you all so much. And speaking of being appreciative, thank you all to my Patreon patrons. I truly do appreciate all the support. It's been a wonderful spring thus far, and we've had some really, really interesting conversations already, and I'm looking forward to our post-Investor Day discussions after March 1st. And of course, if you want to join the team before then, just check out the link in the description. And if you're interested in a whole bunch of really cool merch, check out our merch store. Link is in the description. We have TeslaBot t-shirts, the Tesla meme t-shirt, Success is a Possible Outcome, 4680 battery cells. All of that stuff is on t-shirts, mugs, tumblers, and on and on. So check it out. And finally, don't forget we are both Tesla and Amazon affiliates. If you look in the description, you can see how going shopping for a solar roof, a Powerwall, or anything on Amazon helps out the channel. In the meantime, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.